Today, I got a quick video for you guys. We're going to theorize one buff for every dually weapon in Splatoon 3. Some definitely need buffs more than others, but regardless, we're gonna craft an idea for each of them. If you want to see more dually content like this, be sure to drop a like and consider subscribing. First up, we have Splat Dualies. This weapon was strong for most of Splatoon 3's life, but it's declined a bit in usage recently. Honestly though, I do believe this weapon was largely carried due to its extremely strong vanilla kit, but the actual gun itself is pretty good too. It basically had its major weaknesses buffed in Splatoon 3, aka ink consumption and dodge roll speed. So if we had to give it a buff, what would it be? Well, we need to be careful with this, but I would honestly say just give it the same velocity and range buff that they gave to a variety of other weapons a while back. They gave this buff to some other shorter ranged weapons like N-Zap, Dapple Dualies, and even Splattershot, which used to have the exact same range as the Splat Dualies. Again, this wouldn't be a crazy range buff, it would just be a very minuscule amount like what they gave the other weapons. Just a little something to give it a bit more of an edge in fights. Especially with all the blasters running around right now, this could be very helpful. Next up are Dapple Dualies. At the time of writing this video, the Dapples are the best dually in Splatoon 3. In fact, it's arguably a top 5 weapon in the game right now. So these don't really need a buff. But hey, the point of the video is to give one buff to every dually, so we gotta come up with one. But hey, I didn't say it has to be a notable buff. Let's just play it safe with these. Improve its overall ink consumption by 2%. This will just give it a little more uptime and make using its sub-weapon a little bit safer. Actually, a buff like this would be really nice for the Splat Bomb on the Noct T kit especially. You know, the one that nobody plays. Okay, so I know the buffs for the last two dualies were kinda boring, but that's because we started with the two best dualies in the game. Now we're getting into the more sucky ones, which means we can be more ambitious with our buffs. Next up, Dualie Squelchers. Oh boy. You can honestly say that this is the dually that needs the most buffs out of all of them. You all know the story by now. This gun was extremely good in Splatoon 2, Nintendo nerfed the hell out of it, and it's just been mid ever since. Actually, that's a great segue into the buff ideas that I have for this weapon. They need to undo the harsh nerfs it received in Splatoon 2. Okay, so I'm gonna kinda cheat on this one. We're gonna give the Dualie Squelchers 2 buffs instead of 1, because this weapon deserves it. First, buff its ink consumption. A single dodge roll on this weapon consumes 8% of your ink tank. In early Splatoon 2, it only consumed 5%. Let's buff it back to that. Also, let's fix its accuracy while jumping. To be more specific, I'm talking about its accuracy in spread mode, like this. This is a bit of an advanced move, but this was something that was really strong on Dualie Squelchers back in Splatoon 2, until they nerfed its midair accuracy. Sure, running Intensify action can help with this, but you need a significant amount. Just buff its midair accuracy back to how it was before, so that people can afford to run other abilities while still having decent accuracy while jumping. Honestly, this thing could maybe even use more buffs, but let's stick with just these two for now. Glooga Dualies. This is a weird one, because Nintendo actually tried really hard to make this weapon good in Splatoon 3. It's gotten some really good buffs, such as an insane paint increase and a really noticeable fall-off damage buff. Even at the absolute tip of this thing's range, it's usually always a 2-shot kill. But sadly, even with these great buffs, this weapon still sees relatively no use. I think the weapon is just a bit too slow and clunky, especially with how fast-paced the Splatoon 3 meta is. So that's what I think they need to adjust. I decided that the best thing for this weapon would be to speed up its dodge rolls just a tad, similar to the buff they gave Splat Dualies a while back. Those got a 4-frame speed increase to its dodge roll, so let's give the same to Gloogas. We saw how good this buff was with Splat Dualies, so I think Gloogas would benefit a lot as well. Another buff for Gloogas would be to decrease its end lag after a dodge roll, but I do think that speeding up the dodge rolls themselves would be a bit more impactful. Tetra Dualies. So as most of you probably know, this weapon just got a buff in version 11.0, and it was a pretty good one. It's not something that's suddenly going to make Tetra rise to the top of the meta or anything, but it's a really nice quality of life change that is noticeable sometimes. However, when it comes to this video, I wanted to create a buff that's a bit more impactful for Tetras. When it comes to buff theories for this weapon, I see a lot of people with crazy ideas, like adding an extra dodge roll if you get a kill, or getting free ink resistance during your dodge rolls. While I think these ideas are super cool, it's just not something that Nintendo would ever realistically do. So the buff idea I had for Tetra is quite simple, but really effective. Improve its shot spread RNG in spread mode by 15%. Tetra Dualies in spread mode have the worst accuracy of any gun in the entire game, and that's not an exaggeration. And yeah, I get it, it's like that for a reason. You're encouraged to use your dodge rolls with this weapon, since that's the entire point. But I do have to say, in Splatoon 3 specifically, the game has gotten so fast-paced that Tetras have struggled to keep up for a while now. Giving it just a little bit of an extra tool to work with to allow it to be a little more versatile in fights and be less predictable would go a long way. And also, I'm not saying they should fix the RNG to the point where it's good. Of course, I wouldn't expect them to do that. Just make it a little better. Like maybe give it the same shot spread as Dualie Squelchers or something. Still awful, just not as awful. That's why I think improving it by around 15% would be the sweet spot. Finally, we have Douser Dualies, and I'm really glad we're doing this one last because this is my most ambitious buff idea yet. Just like Tetra, Dousers also got buffed very recently, but it wasn't anything groundbreaking. In fact, that's kind of how I would describe Dousers in a nutshell. Nintendo loves to buff this weapon, but it very rarely gets anything actually impactful. Plus, the buffs it gets are never what it actually needs, which is a painting buff. I get that Nintendo doesn't want it to be too similar to the Jet Squelcher, but it gets to a point where there's really no other way you can save this thing. Well, there might be one way, actually, which is my buff idea. Again, I warned you, this is pretty ambitious, but just hear me out. Make the turret mode on this weapon have the same range as the spread mode. In other words, you will not lose any range after performing a dodge roll. It'll remain exactly the same as if you were strafing. Now, I know what you're probably thinking. Chase, that would be way too OP. But just think about it for a minute. Would it really? Again, remember, this weapon has so much going against it. It's very slow and clunky, and it gets one dodge roll. Plus, its paint sucks. Although I will admit, giving it this range buff will help with its paint output a bit. But I don't know, I've thought a lot about this, and given the Dousers are over 2 years old now, seeing next to no use for its entire lifespan, I think this wouldn't be as crazy of a buff as it might seem. Hell, even with this buff, I don't think the weapon would be top tier or anything. It's too slow. It would certainly help out with a lot of its issues though, because it would be much better in fights. And as mentioned before, it would also help it put out a little more paint. Well, that's it. There's one buff idea for every dualie. Be sure to let me know what you guys thought down below. And also, if you feel like it, feel free to drop your own buffs for every dualie as well. I'd be really curious to see everyone else's ideas regarding the subject. As always, be sure to like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you all have a great day.